In the first episode of this series, I said that this president is insulter in chief. I wouldn't have expected that this soon after I would have to be dealing with a president insulting professors. Listen to him.
After all, wale ambao wanatawala pesa ya dunia hii yetu, ukiangalia ule Steve Jobs wa Apple, ukiangalia huyu wa Microsoft, sijui anaitwa nani, Gates huyu, hakuna mmoja wao alienda university. Lakini wakija hapa, unaona maprofesa wanakimbia kushika mkono tu, hata sio kushika tu mkono. Nisalimie, na nataka unisaidie, najenga kashule yangu pale. Hata sisi marais jameni, ukiambiwa ati wanakuja, unaanza kujivaa sawa sawa na kusoma ati uone ni nini yaweza kukuangukia huko katikati.
This tirade coming from a president is wrong in so many levels. It is hard to imagine more contempt for the educated, stated so cynically by someone whose educational attainment or lack of it thereof is the stuff of conjecture. Several matters arise from this presidential outburst, none of them which makes him look good. As for his contempt for education, I will save that for another day. I want to respond to him on two matters: that of professors for hire and the responsibility of intellectuals. And the second one is that of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and why they are a different type of billionaire from the one he is. Welcome. This is Matters Arising. The first point that the president thinks he is making is that the likes of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates did not go to the university and they have money. So much money that professors are just glad to have a handshake from them in the hope of a handout. First, Mr. President, Steve Jobs is deceased. He won't be coming around to do a handshake with no one. Pun intended. But those of his kin who come, there will be those in the lineup with needs, community, individual, or otherwise. There is nothing wrong with this. I will tell you why a little bit later in this video. Let me first dispense with the claim that professors line up in front of presidents like you, hoping that something will fall their way from your benevolent and awe-giving hands. Here, your perception suffers from what psychologists call false consensus bias. When I was teaching theory of social perception to my university students, I would discuss with them this false consensus effect or false consensus bias. This bias happens when people tend to overestimate the extent to which their opinions, beliefs, preferences, values, and habits are normal and typical of those of the rest of society. This cognitive bias tends to lead to the perception of a consensus that actually does not exist, a false consensus. Your statement seems to make a conclusion about professors and how important you are to them based on the kind of professors you have come across, those who line up for handouts. In your experience, then these are the only professors who exist. Being a Kanu man yourself, you can be forgiven for this thought. This tradition of sanitizing government through hired professors going to State House for handouts is a quintessentially Kanu malady. We actually used to call them Kanu professors. I still see some of them around and there is nothing much to say about them. These very misguided and forgettable characters would follow your predecessors, singing their praises and writing warped opinion pieces in the media, confusing and confounding everyone with hollow English, and then go and line up for more handouts. These are mercenaries, pens for hire, and they have done more damage to this country than is usually acknowledged. This crop of professors for sale have their current day offshoots, especially with the proliferation of village and tribal universities under the Jubilee government. Chances are that when you come across a professor, those are the ones you come across. That is why those are the only professors you know. Mr. President, I have news for you. There is another type. The type you don't know. You don't know them not because they are any less professors. You don't know them because they are not for sale. So they will most probably never stand in line for your handshake. They don't need it. They are content to do the urgent work of producing and disseminating knowledge, most definitely to the children of Kenyans impoverished by a government that has made a habit of corrupting everything and everyone, including the academy. These are noble men and noble women, heroes of our time, earning an honest living in relative obscurity, doing this country greater service than all you politicians combined. You may be surprised they exist. Yes, they do. Only that you've never met them, because they will not stand in line for a handout from you or from any other politician. Sadly and mistakenly, they will not engage in politics. If you ask me, this is a strategic mistake, for in failing to engage in politics, we are now faced with the inevitable rise of presidents of dubious educational background, cynical about the value of education, proud to impoverish and then buy professors with handouts, and laugh about it in public. But they do seek and talk to the Bill Gates of this world. So on that one, you are not too wrong. And this brings me back to your comment about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. They may not have a university education, but they are not fools. They are brilliant men of their generation. They are called innovator entrepreneurs. They are brilliant enough to come up with ideas, create products out of them, and achieve phenomenal global commercial success. This kind of brilliance is not cultivated in school. School may be necessary, but it is not sufficient to produce this group of people in society. Do people line up to greet them and get money from them? Yes. But this is a very different kind of line from the one in which you give handouts to Kano professors for sale. You see, Mr. President, when these innovator entrepreneurs make a lot of legitimate money, they give it away. It is called philanthropy, and they become what we call philanthropists. In fact, to make sure that people can approach them for money, they form things called philanthropic organizations. Anyone, including professors, is free to approach them through these organizations to seek funding for research and community-based projects of benefit to humanity. It is a very, very different kind of handout from the one you give. They give away their legitimate money in a structured manner to change society, not to buy and corrupt power. In contrast, in Africa, we have billionaire presidents who cannot account for how they got their billions. We can only hypothesize where they get their billions by looking at the millions of poor citizens, run-down countries with professors for sale, corrupt regimes, and sycophants in line with the professors for sale waiting for handouts. Unlike billionaire innovator entrepreneurs, African billionaire presidents get rich out of the largesse of the state. They therefore cannot do philanthropy because they need the money to buy power, and keep power in order to protect their illegitimate accumulation and continue accumulating more. Professors for sale are not a new phenomenon in Kenya. Unfortunately, they are the only type that the president knows. When you are a Kanu man, it is hard to know any other type. There are, however, professors who are not for sale. They are in lecture rooms trying to rescue the children of the impoverished citizenry from the doom and gloom created by the same African presidents, busy bribing their colleagues for favorable reviews and sanitization. The tool of these professors is not handouts. It is the same education that the president so cynically and offensively demeans as useless. Many students being taught by these professors will never benefit from the political handouts that have kept their parents in poverty for a generation, but many have benefited from the programs of innovator entrepreneurs who have made clean money and become philanthropists. As the corrupt government machinery runs and creates billionaire politicians and dynasties, it may give the country, and hopefully the president, some relief to know that there are billionaires interested in genuinely uplifting society and not using stolen fortunes to buy and corrupt power. And what more, there are professors who are not for sale. For Matters Arising, I am Professor Wainaina.